This is part 2 of the previous panel episode. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, you should definitely go back and check that out first. And as always, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting via patreon.com/nice mangoes. It's listeners like you that help this show survive and thrive. If you found my work valuable or helpful in any way, please do consider supporting because it goes a long, long way when you do. And now, the episode.
Make sure that that program doesn't contain controversial subjects and you're not impolite to people.
No, definitely not, Dad. You know me. I'm never, ever controversial or impolite.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Conversations with your lovable, never pisses anyone off, ex-Muslim host Aina, keeping it non-controversial.
What do you think we're doing? We're not. we're fighting this, and we're fighting it on multiple fronts, unfortunately. And yes, has religion done problematic things? Yeah, and of course they're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to be an issue. But and maybe Daniel, you can back me up a little on, like, for instance, this new group. I think they're called FAIR.
Yep. I've been kind of vaguely looking into them, but yes, I'm aware. Yes,
I am not aware. Can you explain, please?
It's the FAIR for All, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. And I'm looking at Steven Pinker right in my face. I'm looking at Ayaan Hirsi Ali. I'm looking at Barry Weiss. I'm looking at all these people here who are the kind of people that you're talking. And if you would like to know some of the really important ways that these people are fighting back against racism, well, they're fighting back against a federal law that provides a farmer debt relief for people who are minority farmers. So non-minorities, white people excluded. That's wrong. That's so racist.
That's the only real racism.
They're going to fight back against that.
White people. Racist against white farmers.
They're fighting against a federal fund that gives some things to restaurant owners that are, based on their skin color or their gender. So that's terrible. They're going to fight against that. That, the stuff that they're fighting against is pro-white people.
that thing that you're talking about that has to do with black farmers and relief that was proposed to be given to them. That sparked literally the most racist rant/sketch that I've ever seen Steven Crowder do. And that's really saying something, because I'm not even going to repeat any of it because it's just so incredibly insulting. It's easy to find, but just that really says something that's like the hills that they're choosing to.
Yeah, that sketch, just as someone who has followed more, overtly racist content than anyone ever should. You could have taken that sketch and put it over on The Daily Show, and it would have fit right in.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's what I think we're talking about. Like, you have the leadership who are polite. They are nicely dressed. They don't say the N-word,
But they do fight for people who do say it.
And they don't burn crosses.
They don't burn crosses, except for that one guy. That one,
that one guy at one time. We don't talk about that.
Yeah, we'll just pass that by. It doesn't matter. But they will champion the same things, and their arguments are wildly similar somehow. So when I think that Eli talked about CRT, as I don't think he's wrong when he says that, a couple years ago, the Southern Baptist Conference was talking about CRT, and that, maybe religious groups might have been first on the scene, but that banner is being taken up by atheists.
Sam Harris is talking about CRT now.
atheists and people who are in the IDW, and so it's
almost
like a
as if they're merging. Yeah, that's
there's a little bit. You might say that there between the red and the blue, there's getting a little purple in there. You might say that.
Well, let's
somewhere.
Let's also like, not to defend the Southern Baptist Convention, but like the Southern Baptist Convention came out very strong and hard against the alt-right years ago. Like, they disfellowshipped a guy named James Edwards, who has produced a racist radio show since 2004, and disfellowshipped not him but his entire congregation. I think in 2019, they have actually pushed to embrace some of the ideas of critical race theory in their kind of official congregation. And this is because of their kind of former leader who kind of got ousted in the last couple of weeks, a guy named Russell Moore. Now, I'm not defending Russell Moore. Russell Moore is a vicious transphobe and a homophobe and religious bigot and all of his other things. But the Southern Baptist Convention was moving in the right direction, right? Like, they were doing things to embrace their African-American congregants in a way that, frankly, New Atheism, while was probably better overall than the Southern Baptist Convention, is kind of moving in the opposite direction. And so I feel, again, this is again a kind of materially based, historically based, nuanced conversation that we could actually have about, like, well, which is actually the organization that's doing the better things right now, this kind of nebulous New Atheism or the Southern Baptist Convention.
Let me just interject with another quote from Chris Stedman's article in contrast to what you just said about the Southern Baptists denouncing, was it white supremacists or alt-righters?
Russell Moore had a quote where he said something to the effect of, like, the Christian cross and the Confederate flag cannot coexist without one of them burning the other, effectively. And I disagree with that. That's a kind of defense of racism. That's a defense of the kind of historical racism of Christianity. I'm not arguing about that. I'm not defending that statement. But they overtly rejected the kind of explicit symbols of racism in a very clear way among that convention. And I think that any discussion about these issues has to kind of like contend with that fact, right? Even if we can also, as I completely do, I completely reject the SBC and its connection to, kind of the Republican Party and white supremacist, implicit white supremacist policies in the U.S. Sorry, this is kind of late in this episode, I know, to kind of bring up something that's like really complicated, but I think there's. Sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it was also in that article too, like the original Salon article. I'm surprised that they didn't go into like PragerU, because a lot of these people have gone on to PragerU, which you could call
CLE, yeah.
Yeah, which you could call emerging, right? Like PragerU recognizes that these people are saying the same things he's saying, just in a different way, or like, it's a little bit more cloak and dagger or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, but they're essentially, their message is the same, and so they'll put them on PragerU and they'll get views, and then they can also point to them like they do with Dave Rubin and say, like, look, these people are atheists and they still agree with us, right? Like, that's literally how like the merging is happening. Yeah. So. Even though Dave Rubin has now rejected his atheism, right? But he got prominent. Yeah, he got prominent because he was A, an atheist, and B, he was gay, and a liberal, supposedly, right? Yeah, so, but he's just he's a blank slate is really what he is. Like, he's just an idiot. So he decided that it's not working for him anymore to be an atheist, so now he's embraced God.
Can I bring up, just real quickly, I didn't want to let this go unspoken of. It's such a silly part of his opening that I wanted to mention. Is that cool? Okay, so at the start of, this is a silly thing to bring up, but I just thought it was kind of funny. At the very opening, he has this whole thing like, I'd rather be talking to you about this. I'd rather be talking to you about that. One of the things that he brings up, and I'm not shaming it. Okay, that's perfectly fine. I know what you're gonna say. He says, I'd like to tell you what I learned about spirituality from group sex, and I just thought that was quite a flex. He mentions it more than once.
Yeah, he did.
He mentions it. He seems to really want people to know that he's been in orgies before. And I mean, like, I understand. Like, hey, cool, man. Like, do it. Like, I have no problem with it. But it's just like spirituality. You learned spirituality. Like, what were you on peyote at the time? I'm sorry. I had to bring that up. It was just so funny to me.
After I blew my load for the fourth time that night, I couldn't even recognize my own face. That's how deep. That's how deep into the meditation I was.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
clearly. Yeah.
And after he ejaculated, he experienced ego death. I'm sorry. That's a little bit, maybe a bit much. Maybe I want to cut that out.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, he's very proud of his group sex. Anyway, yes, please, Lina, continue.
I'm going to read this quote now. I spoke with a staffer at one of America's largest secular organizations on the condition of anonymity, who told me that issuing a statement condemning Richard Spencer was discussed but shot down, in part because the organization's leadership didn't want to draw attention to the fact that Spencer is an atheist. This same organization, which regularly issues statements about political issues as a major part of its advocacy strategy, also reportedly declined staff requests to release a statement condemning Trump's appointment of Steve Bannon as a White House advisor. According to the member I spoke to, the organization's management didn't want to publicly oppose anyone in Trump's cabinet or inner circle.
That's insane.
And so when I asked my source why they thought a secular organization's leadership would make these decisions, they replied, when advancing atheism is your primary motive, you may have an interest in ignoring that some atheists are white nationalists and neo-Nazis. But staying silent also means keeping supporters who may otherwise be pissed off that you criticize the alt-right. So, yeah.
Yikes.
That's what I'm talking about. How they don't present a united front. They want to. They think that if they can keep as many people as possible within their movement, that it's better for them. But I think it's the opposite. If they get rid of or make the people that are damaging the movement feel unwelcome, then it will bring more diversity, which will only help the movement, right? So,
well, yeah, this is what happens when atheism is your only concern, and then you don't want to rock the boat on anything else.
Yeah, it's nice to see on Twitter. I just saw one a little while ago from an atheist saying, we actually have to start asking our the creators that we follow, what do they believe, right? Like outside of atheism, right? Like what actually do you believe? What do you stand for? Because that's the only way that you're gonna create a movement that goes anywhere outside of promoting white nationalists and and CRT. These are just moral panics, right? The very thing that Sam Harris often talks about, the moral panics. He's part of one, right? Like, it's unbelievable.
People were so incensed that, when the whole atheism plus thing occurred, and they saw it as some sort of how dare you inject all these things into atheism? And one, it's like what you just said. I agree with it, and it's like just time has sort of vindicated those people, even though it was tremendously unsuccessful at the time. That probably would have been a good idea to create something that where it's like, okay, yeah, it matters it matters more, what other beliefs you have, and and you could be helpful to this movement if you don't believe X, Y, and Z. But then the funny thing is that atheism plus sort of happened anyhow, but it became atheism plus anti-feminism and atheism plus black people don't have high IQs.
Right. It's atheism plus anti-wokeness.
It became kind of, at least, it's still to some degree is the case, but for a while, it's like you couldn't be a successful atheist without at least having some level of okayness with, I know that's not a word, but let's pretend it is, with those things. You had to tolerate people who were saying that shit.
Yeah, and you still see remnants of that now. Like you see how like I'm not talking about the creators themselves, but their fans will just charge in and say, you got to be polite, you got to be nice, you got to do this, you got to do that. We need to build this movement. You got to be nice. That's the opposite of what you need to do. Like I'm tired of being nice to like people that are abusing me. Like it's
I think it's when you travel among groups that are very leftist or that have a lot of marginalized people and other kinds of social justice groups, and, it becomes almost a cliche to hear about, I stopped having anything to do with atheism when Elevator Gate happened. I stopped when I saw this. I stopped when I saw that, and... you got to understand, the genie is already outside of the bottle. Like, the word is out. It's on the street. People know that you got this problem. So now it's about dealing with the problem because, people are just not lining up to join up who otherwise would, because a lot of people are atheists or agnostics or concerned about Christian groups and their overreach in our lives and what's going on in like the Supreme Court. So it's not like these people don't care, but they know that the atheist groups are going to want to have not so much fight against that as have a conversation about whether trans people should be in sports. And then if you say, screw you, that's not where are you going with the, just stop it with your bigotry. They're going to put up a big picture of themselves as Galileo. Like, basically, I'm Galileo, well known for his transphobia. That's what the problem was with Galileo. So,
yeah. Also, I don't have time to make the correction video because I'm too busy making the Galileo video.
Yeah, but what you're saying, I mean, I think it just ultimately supports what Godless Cranium Mike was saying earlier. I mean, the best way in order, because again, at a certain point, Eli says that atheism is a social justice movement, and I certainly don't think it is. It could have been, and perhaps one day, if there's just this huge paradigm shift, it could be. But you know what? It's never going to be until we address the problems that are outlined within that article.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I completely agree with that. And also, like, the just going back to Elevator Gate, like, Rebecca Watson puts out fantastic content. And imagine if it had gone the other way and, like, we supported content creators like Rebecca Watson and people that were progressive. We could literally be having a way different conversation right now about how great the secular movement is and how affirming it is, right? Like it's and she still gets maligned online. But if you go watch, it's same with Steve Shives, for example. Like, I didn't know anything about Steve Shives until pretty recently. And because I would always see like him getting dumped on by people either on Twitter or on things. So I was like, I'm going to go watch a couple of his videos and see, what's so terrible about this guy. And, a lot of the videos I'd watched completely, like, they just took him out of context or they chopped off pieces so that it could make him look bad. And I started watching his content and I'm like, yeah, this is my guy. Like, like when he's like about probably 95% of what he says, I completely agree with, and the other stuff would probably be quibbles mostly. Right. Like, imagine if we had
but you're not putting out a video based on a one-word quibble, right?
Right, exactly. I don't want...
his treatment, similar to what we talked about with PZ Myers, who got lawsuits and like slap suits against him. These people were horribly treated within their own movement, really badly, like to the point where I assume that there's probably been some trauma because, like, I remember just some of the worst things I've ever seen online being done, like people spreading rumors about pedophilia or people making false accusations.
it's not comparable to getting a laugh emoji, you know.
Well, I know that, but I would never. But no, and yes, I am sure that people who are in the community who are beloved, and they are progressive, they do say progressive things, but they don't understand. And I wanted to talk very quickly about, to your point about atheism being a social justice movement. I had said, okay, I understand where you're coming from with that. I agree with that. In the theory of in its most ideal state, that's what it is. I had people coming up to me afterwards and being like, trans people or people just that I know, and they were really saying, yeah, I really got to disagree with you on that. You're minimizing what we are experiencing. And that was God, you're right. I am minimizing it. If you listen and you hear that, you're going to hear that all the time. And that's not good. And you're hearing it from atheists, but it's not atheists that anybody cares about, apparently. Yeah. So I had an experience with the group Atheist Republic. Have you ever?
Oh my gosh.
They're terrible, yeah.
The absolute worst atheist group in the world.
They're pretty bad, right?
Is that the one started by Armin?
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the guy who thinks Judaism is worse than Nazism.
Yeah.
So they had put out some transphobic memes, your basic versions of the one joke.
Yeah.
Because that's the one joke. So we'll all tell that joke till we die.
Right.
And, I knew a lot of atheists who are also trans people who are like, we're so sick of this. We're so sick of fighting this battle. We're so sick of having to do this. Nobody shows up. So I was like, well, all right, I'll go argue. And I was just like, they were just like, yeah, fuck off. I'm like, no, I'm telling you that there are these people. They're atheists. They care. They're just, you're hurting them. Fuck off,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care.
Yeah, and then they say, well, why are we mostly, why is our demographics look like mostly white males?
Because you're chasing people away, literally.
Exactly.
No, I don't think Armin would worry about that. In fact, he is more concerned about how anti-white racism is systemic because it's become normalized to be racist to white people, apparently.
Do I need to talk about Robert Whittaker here? Is that a thing that we have to do?
If you can sum it up quickly, go for it.
Bob Whittaker, former Reagan White House official, died in either late 2017, early 2018, can't remember. Created something called the mantra. And the mantra was anti-racist is code for anti-white.
Yep.
Pushed it out there, created the meme. There are a number of literal Nazis who deliberately kind of pushed that out into the mainstream. And if you are using the word anti-white unironically, you are engaging in the same kind. You are fundamentally doing what Bob Whittaker and his acolytes want, because you are accepting the frame that, for instance, affirmative action programs, etc., are anti-white, that anti-racist programs are anti-white. And so what we should be talking about is anti-white hegemony. But that's just the power of the meme culture out there. And so, sorry, this is a bugaboo of mine because, over the course of the last 5 years, as I've been kind of getting deep into neo-Nazi headspace, I've been seeing people actually, very rationally talk about, what should we have anti-white things in our laws, and should we be talking about this? And what you're doing is you're just giving space to Nazis. That's all you're doing,
Yep, and that rhetoric has leaked into the atheist scene. In fact, now, after the Trump era, there has become, there's been more awareness about it, so people recognize the dog whistles and stuff. But back before Trump, in 2014, 2015, it was a regular thing to see on atheist Twitter. That's anti-white. When someone would complain too much about racism, I guess you're fine with anti-white racism. And I mean, it was just, that's what I would see all the time. I have been piled on, you know, for being, you know, Muslim immigrant savage. Someone in the atheist Twitter sphere one time, I guess, criticized some actual Islamist bigot online by calling them, you know, like a savage who eats their food with their hands or dips their hands in the communal hummus or some awful thing like that. And I just said to them that, you know, that's unnecessary. You can speak about his bigotry without being a bigot yourself, because there are plenty of cultures that eat with their hands. In fact, in North America, people eat with chicken wings, French fries, pizza. You know, it's just an awful thing to say. If he's an Islamist, you can criticize him for that. And then I got piled on by, like, I don't know, I got like 500 hate notifications from like rational atheists trying to convince me that it is okay, in fact, to be anti-Muslim. It is okay to equate Muslims with savages. And I've just gone through so much of this stuff that I have lost my ability to be extremely polite. I have been very patient with a lot of people. I have calmly tried to convince people that there's not any meaningful difference between white nationalists, white supremacists. People who are splitting hairs about that should not be entertained. You know, I have been so patient, but I am just so beyond done. And when I see that coming from the left side of atheism, I'm sorry if I just, after, I don't know, 6 years, don't have the ability to be all soft and gentle about it, and to, I mean, I'm just going to call it like I see it. This is, as someone who's lived and grown up in an actual theocracy, quotes like this is from, again, from Eli's, the self-congratulatory nature of this is just, this is him talking about, like, you know, I guess people like us, where he's talking about people like him fighting against the religious and theocracy. You guys keep fighting back the tide of theocracy. I'll be here in the back telling everyone what assholes you are, but as soon as the movement is perfect, count me in. I mean, I have lived in an actual theocracy, and I have spoken out against it. I have criticized it. I have put my own safety on the line to speak up about it. And there's this privileged white guy talking about how he is the dude that is fighting back the tide of theocracy. And we're the assholes. They're doing nothing and just telling people, these poor guys who are fighting, who are doing all the hard work, we're just sitting in the back and saying, no, no, no. They're just assholes.
It's so backwards, because it's like, my journey was that, like, I held on to the atheist title as long as I could until there were so many assholes that that I couldn't ignore it anymore. So it's, I don't know. I mean, just a fundamental disagreement of things, of like the nature of things.
Of how you improve things.
Yeah.
They also kind of, so another thing too is that, like, I think a lot of people don't understand is that, like, if you get, so just say, for example, Ina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably get a lot of, like you were talking about, you know, attacks on anti-Muslimness or whatever, and then you have to explain that over and over. So you could say the same for trans people. You have to explain your pronouns. You have to explain this. So you have to explain that. It wears you down, and then after a time, you just don't have the patience to continually answer the same question over and over and over again, and then you're called rude, and impolite, instead of, you know, understanding that, you know, they've probably had to have this conversation that is literally fighting for their right to survive, or their right to have rights, like everybody else. And that's an attack on them, like on their identity, on their literal human rights. Like the trans athlete thing is like an attack on their human rights, right? And we shouldn't have to explain it 1,000 times. And if we do explain it 1,000 times, you're not going to have the patience the 1,000th time that you did the first time. So, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of point that out. Anyways.
Yeah. So pardon me if I do a laugh emoji. I mean, the horror.
I think, the point is that we want solidarity with this movement and we want to be a part of it, but we're not, we're being harmed by it. We're not being allowed.
Yeah.
I can go into other leftist progressive movements and not have to put up with nearly this much crap. And criticism to me is a healthy thing. Holding people accountable is a healthy thing. But if I try to go into this, it's really disappointing. I'm sorry. I was so disappointed with the response. It was hurtful. Every time you start to say, well, we're getting some progressive voices in here. People are, talking the talk. And then it comes down to somebody says something that they don't like. And we know that we are going to be marginalized and subordinated in this movement. We know that we're not going to be listened to. We're going to be pushed aside. We're going to be treated as less. And, we know it. We know it. But we keep fighting here. We keep arguing because, I don't know.
That's all you can do.
Because you want change.
What else? Yeah. I don't know. One of these days, maybe it'll work. I don't know.
You're like screaming at the injustice of it. It's basically
right.
What you're doing, right? You're saying, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to continue to fight because you're not going to stop. That's literally the conversation I had in my head for 6 months was am I going to let these people, when I was feeling stronger, I guess, in those strong moments, I would think, am I going to let these people push me out of my YouTube channel instead of fighting back, right? And the answer is no, I'm not going to allow that to happen, right? But I mean, it was a close thing. It's still sometimes close thing when I look at my stats or whatever, and I'm I'm losing subscribers, I'm losing watch time. I think I make good content. I'm not saying I'm the best content creator in the world or anything, but I think I make fairly good content. And so I mean, it's disheartening, I guess.
Look, if you just start defending New Atheism a bit more, I think you can get a lot more subscribers and you'll be set.
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt in my mind that if I, switched off my actual values and did a Dave Rubin thing, I would totally get more subscribers. It would definitely do that.
Okay, so the last quote I wanted to read from Eli's little rant was another kind of Mott and Bailey, right? So he was talking about how atheism is a social justice movement, and I won't let that be ruined by critics from the outside any more than I'll let it be defined by jerks on the inside. Now, from the context of this whole thing, I assume the jerks on the inside are only the 4 authors and a couple of YouTube or Twitter jerks that exist in Eli's world. And that's it. Now, the critics from the outside, it would imply that is Phil, right? That's the way that I understand it, and that's the way that I saw a lot of other people, responding to him, understood it too. And it's just so wrong because Phil himself, and people like us as well, this is all criticism from the inside. So what is this point even about?
I'll just, I don't have, I'm not involved in movement atheism these days. And
good for you.
I don't speak German. Is not, we don't code it as an explicitly atheist podcast. Although both Jack and I have been very open about the fact that we kind of came onto the internet publicly in the era of the kind of early new atheist movement, and we were both kind of part of that in the day. I will say that I've gotten some pushback from people who want to question my bona fides here. And all I have to say is I was arguing with Creationists in 2003 on Talk Origins, the news group. That's how I got my start in this, right? And I understand that I wasn't a big content creator or whatever. But I've been watching this for 16 years. So, or 18 years at this point. I don't know, the whole thing of like, the outsiders are coming in and criticizing us, and we're the ones like really kind of doing the good work. It's like, well, if you're doing good work, keep doing your good work and ignore those of us on the outside or whatever. But don't stop whining about it, right? Like, I don't like, of all the things you get to talk about on your podcast, of all the things you get to do, you can do more than just complain about a single Salon article. And if you're actually doing useful work, I will
more than just
support
defend
that
new
work.
atheism.
Right. I mean, it just feels like this very kind of disingenuous move again of like, well, those are on the outside and they're not one of us and they're criticizing us because, they don't understand the whole thing. And it's like, no, everyone on this call, I don't know everybody's history, but everyone on this call has been in this for years to one degree or another. And having this conversation has witnessed a lot of stuff. And I don't think that the call is coming from the outside, as is implied. Yeah.
I'd just like to point out that if you're going to say, on the one hand, Sam Harris was kicked out of our movement, we wouldn't have anything to do with him. Like, haha, we vanquished his bad ideas. That's why he left. And then you're going to say, but I don't want to hear about this criticism now because it's bullshit. Like, which is it? Is criticism good or is it bad? Like...
Right, and if it got rid of Sam Harris,
who was this awful person that you guys agree was bad.
Yeah.
You've chased him away. So what's so bad about it? I think what I've always said, and what I will always say, is the people that are hurt most by religion are the marginalized people. It's gay people that have been told their very existence is an affront to God. It's women who have been just crushed under the weight of this very patriarchal notions. And that's where our humanism and our atheism should be looking at giving them a nice place to fall instead of, hey, welcome to the new boss, same as the old boss.
That's right. So, yeah. What do you think, Vadim?
I think I just have to reiterate things that I've already said, which is basically that he's inside this different world than I exist in which there are far fewer jerks within the atheist community, and not just the atheist community, but we're talking about the major influencers. And I just, like I said before, I think that the key to combating the problem is not saying, there's no jerks, or there's very few jerks. It's saying like, yeah, we got some jerks here, and let's unpack that. Let's challenge these jerks. Let's put out counter narratives to what these jerks are saying, and let's hopefully get some more people in who are more representative of other marginalized peoples. I just think we need to make it a more inclusive space, and start actually like putting out different narratives than the jerks who unfortunately are still controlling the conversation and are very much, maybe not in his very small podcast sphere that is the case, and lucky for him, but it's not reflective of the majority of atheism, and it would be nice for him to open his eyes.
The majority of movement atheism, I'd say.
Yeah, the majority of the movement atheism. Last thing I'll say is, I won't deny that there are plenty of good people who do consider themselves movement atheists. I'm sure they're out there. I don't see as many as I wish I did, as I'd like to. But yeah, so I just want to say I'm not indicting the whole as he, might strawman me to say. But yeah, that's just it's like take more to heart what it has to say, and don't take it as an indictment of you yourself and of atheism as an entirety, because that's not what it was about.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you think, JC?
I know I agree with all of that, like all of what the other three people said. But I guess one thing I wanted to like kind of talk about a little bit was that this idea, like I get asked this a lot, and it's kind of like a theme in those podcasts as well, that I don't like Sam Harris, so why should I care what Sam Harris does? He doesn't have anything to do with me, which in some cases, like for example, in my case, I was a patron of Sam Harris, so I helped elevate him to the position that he holds now.
Yeah, but these guys were fans at some point as well.
Exactly, and that's the point I want to make, is that like, sure, you might not like Sam Harris, but we are as a if you want to be a movement, the movement is also responsible for who you elevate into positions of power, right? So like Silverman didn't get to be the head of the American Atheists by himself, right? Like that was a combined movement that put him in that position of power, and look what happened. Same with Sam Harris, same with Dawkins, right? So I think that's why people should care. I think that atheists should very much care about what kind of people they've elevated in the discourse, right? And try to work on maybe elevating people that aren't so toxic. But that's just
It cannot be an accident that so many of the leaders have done these kinds of things. It cannot be an accident that there are so many sexual abusers, sex pests, harassers, and people who cover up for them are in such a prominent position. Like, that can't just be what a weird coincidence that all of us happen to sit around and think about, Black people's IQ numbers a lot, because that's a normal thing that normal people do. Like, no, there's a problem here, and you've got to figure out where those problems are. And it's not just this guy, and it's not just that guy. It is a problem in movement atheism. You have to address it. You have to look at it. I think that there's probably, we could go on forever and talk about, the debate bro thing, or talk about why, I
also think that there's another huge problem with movement atheism is this overemphasis of rationality over feelings, as if like people are divorced from their feelings, or there's some people that are more divorced and more rational, where like everything you do is kind of filtered through your feelings, right? Like there's no way to like differentiate the two. Like I could push down my feelings and talk like Sam Harris, right? But I mean, underneath that it helps inform my opinions. So like, and that's also, I think, another big reason why women get marginalized in the atheist communities, because they get framed as being over emotional, right? And,
even when they're not, even when the dude is the one being hysterical, having, meltdowns or whatever. It's, women get framed that way, and it is frustrating as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like SJW. So if you're a male, you get get labeled as an SJW, and then now you're also in that side, right? Like you're more emotional than everyone else, so your opinions don't matter as much, right? Yeah. But it's the opposite. People have real good reason to be like feel rage, or to feel as if they've been to be upset, right? Like and we're gonna have to like admit that and say like, listen, when people are upset, we should probably listen to why they're upset, right? Yeah. So
this was being framed as like one guy who had some racist on one time. This isn't just that. It is so dangerous and so harmful to minimize it that way. It is so many people having so many racists on their platforms, and also them promoting them, defending other racists, minimizing other racists, allying with other racists. It is just endless.
And also framing the people that actually speak up. Like, for example, like Non Sequitur Show, for example, had on JR, whatever, who's a rapist, allegedly, and a white nationalist. And they had him on multiple times. And I remember myself.
Calliope.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
that's right.
Garepi.
Jerry Epi, or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
his name
that
is.
guy.
Gary Epi, who I know a lot about, if you ever want to ask. But
And I remember me and Chrisiousity saying, "Look, stop doing that. That's like, what are you doing?" And then getting shouted down and being told that was that we were just being hysterical.
Yeah,
I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because that was an awful experience, because they wanted me to come on.
Who is this channel? Sorry?
This is, I'm sorry, it was called The Non Sequitur Show.
And it's an atheist channel?
It was,
the
atheist,
impact of slavery? Is that what the episode was called?
Something like that. That was the one where like the host made a heart sign towards Jerry Epi. I believe it was that episode, which I pointed out. It was Steve McRae and Kyle. I can't remember his last name. Kyle Curtis. And
God!
They created the Non Sequitur show, and it was at the beginning. It was like just people talking and stuff. And I actually promoted it. I was on it at the beginning, and then I started to realize, like, looking at it, like, oh my God, what's going on there? Because like the thing with debate shows is you have to keep getting more and more, outrageous, right? Yeah. So it started out like just talking about like flat Earth or stuff to do with atheism, and it gradually morphed into what Chrissy's probably going to talk about right now. So go ahead, Chrissy.
So, all right. So he was on, and basically, I don't really care about debate shows. It's not my interest to, like, fine, have your little debate. But when I heard that this particular person came on, I was like, listen, you can't have him on. For one thing, like, this is the real deal. Like, you want to talk about white supremacist, all that crap, this is him. And second, he uses these programs to find people and that he can then have very inappropriate sexual relationships with, right? So people who are very young, people who are have disabilities, and he's done this more than once.
I've heard about that.
So I was like, you can't do this. Like, you cannot put him on. And so they were very offended at my lack of rationality, as you would be in making these kinds of things. And they wanted me to come on and talk about it because, of course, the only way you could do anything in atheism is have a debate, right? Said, all right, I'll come on and I'll talk about it. And we had set up so that we had a very friendly group, right? But when I came on, it was a bunch of people I didn't know, right? And I was like, who are these people? And I said, well, all right, so this is what we're going to talk about, right? And they said, well, we need evidence of what this guy has done. And I was like, okay, but this is a known thing, right? Like, you didn't tell me I was going to need to bring evidence. I said, I can get you the evidence because there have been all these court cases about it. Like, this was an actual court case that went to, and I said, but if I bring this on right now, it's got their names, it's got addresses. I mean, I don't want to. I had literally, when this document had first started going around the internet, I called their lawyer and I said, there's a bunch of white nationalists sharing these people's information. You've got to tell them and do something about it, right? Like, because I'm very concerned about that. These aren't nice people that are that we're talking about here. These are the real deal, straight up Nazi types. And
just to interject here, J.F. Gary Epi has appeared on The Daily Shoah, so
like a real Nazi.
Yeah, full on.
But Peter Boghossian tells me that there are no Nazis anymore because we're not in Nazi Germany.
But I just need to I'm sorry, I just have to get this out. So I go on and I'm like arguing with them, like, I can't just come up with this. You didn't tell me you needed this. I would have thought that you've already had him on your program. You've already been told about this. Why haven't you looked this up? Why haven't you done this?
Right.
Like, if I was bringing him on my program and people were telling me this, I would have done it. And they're like, no, you have to come forward with this evidence. And, I'm talking about him as a rapist, and there's this guy there I'd never heard of in my life. His name was Rags or something, and he
Rags
starts
the dog?
Rags the dog, I think, yeah. And he starts talking about rape jokes. And his rape jokes are literally, I like to rape people. I rape everyone. And I was like, I'm fucking out. Like, and I just left. And then they had the scientist Mel, who was still on, like, because I had ditched. Because I was like, I'm done. I'm done with your shit. I'm done with this. This is a bad situation. And they were bringing on, like, people who were incels, who had all this like, very rapey background, and saying, no. And she's like, I don't want to talk to these people. I'm not going to talk to these people. This is very traumatizing for me. I'm not going to do this, like, and being yelled at by their audience saying, well, you won't have a rational conversation with these people. Like, what is the matter with you people? Like, is what you want to say. Shut up. Like,
I think she got harassed for a while too after that. Maybe still does.
Did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, this is such an ongoing problem and such a severe problem.
Yeah, there are endless examples.
And if you want to talk about, like, I'm sorry, I'm just, like, frustrated now.
Yeah, that's completely.
I'm actually sorry I brought it up. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
No, it's no problem.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start wrapping up. I'll just ask you guys your final thoughts on this. I guess we kind of did that already. What I'll ask you, actually, is what kind of person do you think is offended by criticism of new atheism? And what kind of person is going to, not by accident one time, but repeatedly go to bat for this thing? Repeatedly defend this thing, new atheism, over slight quibbles. What kind of person is this?
So I'm going to give two possibilities. At best, in my mind, this is a person who finds atheism to be such a sacred thing that they have to kind of shut out all of these obvious things that are going on and kind of just rearrange the universe to be something that it isn't in order to justify that, you know, the premise of that article. And then at worst, I'd say that there's someone who just does not recognize how much privilege they have, and is also very concerned with protecting atheism as this sacred thing, and that sense of privilege just shields them from seeing all of the abundance of horribleness that is going on within the movement currently and has for a while now.
Right.
Yeah. But there you go.
Mine's pretty short. I would just say a lot of times it's pedantic people that, you know, want to quibble about one word instead of actually face the issues that are affecting the atheist community and have for a long time. Because it's easier to do that, and it's easier to, and people want to believe that they're doing a good thing, right? Like they want to believe that they're doing something that's meaningful, and so they don't want to hear the people that are saying maybe you should be looking at this other thing in your own movement that's bad or not good. And you know, I think that's a problem. And I think out of all of the kind of like I don't know, movements or like things that I've been a part of throughout my life, I find atheists to be some of the most unable to deal with criticism that I've ever seen, and I don't know why that is, but it's really bad that we can't just say, you know, maybe we need to change course and do something different. Maybe we need to confront the transphobia that's rampant in our community. Maybe we need to look at the creators that are spreading that transphobia and stand against them as a united front and say we're not okay with this. I don't know. That would be. I think that's the way forward. But who am I? So that's my take.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and also they shouldn't stop spending time defending new atheists. Like just stop. Like
just stop.
Yeah.
I just gotta feel like you have to care that your movement, if you love your movement, you have to care that that Nazis are piggybacking on it. You have to, that should be important to you. That not just Nazis, obviously, but far right figures or extremists or anti-vaxxers. If your movement and aspects of your movement are being used to smuggle these ideas into the mainstream in any way, if this is something that has consistently gone on and you care about your movement, what the fuck are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to stop quibbling. You've got to stop being in this denialist space, and you've got to turn around and say, we're going to deal with this. Because it stops fucking here.
Let's hope.
I wanted to add to Chrisiossity's point that goes for people like Hemet Mehta, who I like Hemet Mehta, and I think he makes great content. But a lot of times he just pretends that this stuff doesn't exist, or all this good stuff is happening too. Oh yeah, okay, there is good stuff that goes on within the atheist community as well. Like there is fundraisers that happen, stuff like that, and they do good work. But that doesn't overshadow the thing. Like if I go do I don't know, work at a soup kitchen for an afternoon, and on the way home I start kicking homeless people. That doesn't mean, that doesn't make me a great person, right? Like you still have to be able to focus on the thing that's
well, he also does here's atheists as a demographic. Look how progressive they are. See, there are no problems. So that is a very frustrating, dishonest tactic.
Yeah, but it's also more frustrating because whenever he says anything that is against the status quo, he gets beat up on Twitter, and yet he still doesn't realize that this is a problem within the community, right?
He's starting to get a bit better. He's at least started calling out a certain segment of the atheist movement, but if you talk to him about it as a whole, he'll step back into his old patterns. But let's hope that he sees and learns. He's definitely responded to it much better than these guys have in the past couple of weeks. But
can I just ask a quick question that just something I've always wondered. I mean, it's basically how
we're never ending this podcast, are we?
I know. I'm sorry, but I'm so curious to hear what people have to think.
My butt is hurting.
It's okay. All right.
No, I'm joking. Go on.
I'm just wondering, how did we get here? And sometimes I think that it might be literally as simple as when atheism started, there was maybe for some people this thrill that they
Vadim,
got.
that is like a 2-hour question. That's not even a quick question.
All right.
How did we get here? It's such a long answer to that.
I mean,
I'm literally working on a book about that. So
we could literally have another podcast about it.
This is my nutshell take, which is that I just think that there was this kick that people got out of kind of talking about atheism. Hey, there is no God. That's like to some that's like an unfortunate truth, if you want to call it that. And people got addicted to that feeling of saying things to people that just were that were deflating, and so they had to move to these other things, which are by no means facts, but just make people feel like shit.
It's also the idea that you're superior to everyone. The idea that you're right and everyone else is wrong. It's also the sort of the hatred of minorities that crept in from the specific criticizing religious minorities. That whole thing caused a lot of overlaps with, I saw so many atheists sharing in the early days, like Paul Joseph Watson videos, because he was criticizing the hijab. And so an ex-Muslim was like, yeah, I know it's Paul Joseph Watson, but oh my gosh, he's so right about this. And so there were the overlaps, and then they started overlapping on more and more and more and more stuff. So I guess that's the shorter answer of it.
It's also feeding into biases, right? Like we all have biases, and you feed into those and make them worse, right? And also I've been told I don't know how many times, if I talk about something outside of atheism, why are you doing that? Stop talking about that. Just talk about atheism, because people want their biases confirmed, right?
Yeah, feels good.
Yeah, and they want it to be confirmed by somebody they see as smart, and so that they can say, well, look, I'm smart. I'm listening to this person, right? That's a big appeal for Sam Harris, right? Is that he comes off as being super ultra rational, and you want to be super ultra rational, so you start doing that, right? Like that's
never mind that he's discussing like mating strategies. Okay, Daniel. So, what are your thoughts on the type of person that is still sort of feels compelled to defend new atheism in 2021 after knowing all the stuff that surrounds it?
It feels very like both facile and fragile to me. Like it feels like this very like psychological mechanism, and I don't try to get into like psychologizing people, because obviously you can't read into somebody's head, but ultimately what happened, we didn't talk about what we did on IDSG 87 and 88 much in this, but clearly there's an influence there. There were some hurt feelings or whatever, which I think is a really unfair feeling, but like I kind of get it. But then the response is so much bigger than that. They could have made like that thing, and instead it becomes this like huge emotional eruption that like kind of disrupts all of our ability to continue to make content that we would really like to make. Like if they said, I won't work with that guy because he said a bad thing about me one time, all right, like I'm sorry, but like I called it as I saw it. But like they have had every opportunity to respond to the actual claims that were made, both in the Salon article and in your podcast and in my podcast.
Well, Daniel, I'm not even acknowledged as a person. Like my podcast, no, they're not going to listen to that.
I mean, there's that too, and I'm not trying to create drama here. I was making a podcast based on like facts. I included enormous amounts of material which demonstrated the things that I was claiming in that podcast. And from what I understand, that wasn't even listened to by the person who got very upset about that until much later, if it has been listened to at all. So those of us on this side of this issue, I am very happy to listen to legitimate
me too, man.
And legitimate criticisms of whatever I have said, or if I misspoke, or if I hurt somebody's feelings. I am happy to apologize for that. But I'm not hearing that. What I'm hearing is a whole lot of really people who are just upset about, like, their hurt feelings for people who are not in their little circle having the temerity to comment on their content. And I'm sorry.
It's literally just about that why did you even comment? It's not even responding to any actual points.
Yeah. All of us in this podcast are semi-professional, I don't know, or like, content producers who comment on issues of importance in the public sphere. We should all be willing to respond to legitimate criticism. Mm-hmm.
At the very least, listen. Yep. Listen to the thing you're complaining about before you complain about it.
Yeah.
At the very least.
And if I'm wrong, I'm happy to retract and correct, and I'm happy to, pull the episode if need be or whatever. But like, I'm not hearing that. What I'm hearing is a whole lot of, people getting very upset over the word merge.
It's so stupid. Okay. It's so ridiculous.
And suddenly, I was supposed to record that on Speak German tonight. And part of the reason that we put that off is so that I could come and do this and keep talking about this issue. And I'm very happy to get to meet you all, and I'm very happy to talk to Ina as always. But I have actual important work to do, tracking far-right dipshits. And so I actually don't particularly care about the feelings of.
You don't care about the word merge?
Podcasters. Yeah. I don't care. I don't care about the definition of the word merge. No.
We could do a whole other podcast on what kind. Like I always hear that like thing about well, you know, when do you like, you know, I don't want to use the word shun, but like, you know, stop talking to somebody or refuse to work with them, wright? Like that's another whole issue within the atheist.
Don't bring anything else up.
I know, but that's like a whole other, I'm saying a whole other podcast about, because that's a pretty nuanced subject, right? And people just say, well, like,
absolutely.
Oh, you say this one thing and you're not, you won't work with me anymore. No, like there's like levels, gradations, right? Like there's a lot of things you could say that I would think that's pretty shitty, but I would still work with you.
Yeah.
I know the perfect time to stop working with someone. It's when they send emojis to you.
That's right. If they do a laugh emoji, it is just the ultimate in cruelty.
There's no going back from there.
No, that's
the I have actually been threatened by Satan worshiping, Charles Manson worshiping neo-Nazi death cult, and that was much preferable to someone sending a laugh emoji to me. So
of course, watch yourself, Daniel. If you're ever mean to me, I will send one to you directly.
I would have to delete all my content and slink away. Surely. Yeah.
Okay, so the last question I have for all of you is, please don't bring any other issues into this. Just answer the question.
Deal.
It is, why did you want to be on this panel? And why did you think it was worth discussing? Because I know I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for it because I'm mean either way. Because I'm the bad guy here. So tell me why you guys felt that you wanted to talk about this issue and why it's important in as quick a way as you can.
Because I can't afford therapy bills. I'm only half joking there. I mean, I have all of this kind of I don't know if unexamined is the right word, but I just have it's been years of contending with all of this, and it really like what we're talking about. I kind of went into it a little bit. This has more or less what we're getting at here has affected my livelihood. It affected my life. It made it far more difficult at a certain point when I spoke up about these things and kind of had a shift within my, my comfort level because I wasn't making as much. And so it's simultaneously the history that I have, contending with that, wanting to get that out there and hopefully feel a little more well-adjusted, and then at the same time recognizing that this is a problem and it is a worthy thing to examine. And hopefully some people will listen to this and, have a little bit more understanding of these things, either people who have had similar feelings to mine or who maybe haven't thought about it as fully and are now kind of like, oh, yeah, this does exist more than I thought. This is more of an issue. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of that discussion and to hear all the insightful things that everyone here has had to say about it.
It's been a pleasure to have you, Vadim.
Why, right back at you.
I'm here, I don't know. Honestly, probably because I'm pissed off and I'm kind of a bitch. Like, I don't know. Like, I am in my own way as stubborn as any Sam Harris will ever be. But it's more like, a stubbornness of no, I'm not going to just go away and leave you to your privilege and comfort. And yes, I'm sorry. I honestly, I never want to see anybody be hurt or be upset. That's not the world we live in, though. There will be hurt feelings, and it is what it is. And you gotta do better. Just fucking do better. That's all.
All right. GC?
I'm a little bit of both of Chrisiousity and Vadim. It's harmed me. through my YouTube. Thankfully, it's not my job, so that's part of the reason why I can do that and like speak out against it, because I have a full-time job working with the deafblind, and I don't. This isn't my job overall. So it's if I don't get any Patreon money, I'll make crappier videos, but I'll still be able to eat, I guess. But also to add to Vadim and Chrisiousity, to be honest, it's just I like your podcast, and I felt like it's a place that I could. I turn down a lot of things often because I don't want to pump their stuff up or whatever. But I really like your podcast. I like your work on Sam Harris. It mirrors almost exactly the way I think. So I guess I'm a fan. So that's part of the reason as well that I wanted to come on as well. So.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I also like Chrisiousity and Vadim, and I like you too, Dan.
No, it's hopefully we can all be great friends in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Big circle of love.
Yeah.
And solidarity.
And Daniel, why did you come on?
Can I get philosophical for just a second? I will make it brief.
Yeah. Fascism
grows when, and this is a historical process, fascism grows and fascism takes power when the centrists decide that it is worth allying with the fascists against the threats from below, from the marginalized, from the queer, from the Jews, from the trans people, from the communists. And a whole lot of what I do is on I Don't Speak German is to talk about that phenomenon and to express that phenomenon and explain how this is happening within your kind of centrist liberal circles and how the systems of oppression are maintained through people having quote-unquote reasonable concerns about issues that they see in their society. And I'm not calling anyone I'm not calling Thomas Smith or Eli Bosnick a fascist, obviously. But they come out and start making the kind of content they're doing in response to this kind of mild criticism from people in marginalized communities. When they start defending this kind of like new atheism bullshit from the people who have been directly harmed by new atheism, that gets my hackles up. That gets my interest up. That gets me. That tells me there's something deeply, deeply wrong within either the people involved or the community involved or this kind of support network. And it is important. It is essential in this time of an increasing reactionary movement in which anti-trans bills are being passed at the state level consistently, in which the leftist movement has been virtually destroyed, despite some positive.
And when anti-racism is being silenced,
anti-racism is being silenced through the anti-CRT stuff that's kind of going out from James Lindsay. When these people are kind of calling out personal slights in defense of proto-fascists, that's concerning. That's deeply concerning. And so I'm here because it's part of my larger project of talking about these issues in a systematic way.
And who do you refer to when you say proto-fascists?
I mean, Harris, Dawkins, and the whole new atheist movement, I think. Sorry, that gets complicated. Certainly,
can you imagine the rage that people are going to feel when they hear you say that, when simply the word merge was so offensive?
Well, you should leave it in, because ultimately, what are they going
I will leave it in.
What are they going to do to me, right? Because I'm gonna take it back and say James Lindsay and Christopher Rufo engaging in the anti-critical race theory bullshit is a proto-fascist movement. I am working on a project of talking about James Lindsay, specifically talking about how he has moved from being kind of, claiming to be the centrist liberal to being kind of full-on fascist. I could play you clips of James Lindsay saying things that are almost identical to things that are said on The Daily Show. I can do that if I put the time to put the clips together. this is important. This is not like we are here. And this is what I'm sorry. I know we're trying to wrap up here. I'm not trying to be grandiloquent here. I'm saying there is a reactionary force. There's a reactionary movement that is working against the gains of the last 70 years that will actively restrict abortion rights, that will actively, kill trans people, that will actively, reduce LGBT rights, that will deport brown people from this country, that will enact violence against Muslims and people who look Muslim, quote unquote. And when you are focused on somebody criticized me for being too kind to a proto-fascist 7 years ago, you are not looking at the actual threat. And I want to see if atheism is actually going to be a social justice movement, it needs to look at the actual threat in this world and stop doing this kind of bullshit, frankly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't understand taking that personally, is because I have no problem admitting that when I was a newer atheist, I also had a lot of shitty centristy views, and I'm not proud of that, and I am making up for that by opposing this stuff so hard and focusing on it. And I also, believe that, we should debate a lot of assholes, and now I think differently about that.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Me too.
But I don't take it personally when you say that stuff, because I'm like, yeah, I have learned and I have evolved, and there should be no shame in saying that we have outgrown this stuff and this is how we move beyond it. But instead, when people cling to it and defend it, and it's just, it's so sad. So yeah, on that note, guys, it was wonderful chatting with you all. I think we could go on for another 3 hours, but
you can make it a 2-parter.
I think I might have to. I never release 3-hour episodes. Yeah, I just want to say to whoever's listening, if you're still both sidesing even this, this issue, that people who defend new atheism versus the people who are, opposing that defending, these are not two sides of the same coin. I would just ask you to think about that for a minute. How harmful is it to defend this stuff? And why wouldn't someone oppose this, and oppose this as many times as other people on the other side will defend it? This is why, even after I've done an episode just debunking the points, I am having this panel so that we can hear a wider variety of perspectives of people who are, immersed in this scene and who have been hurt by the scene, and people who study the far right who recognize the patterns in this stuff. So yeah, I'm just asking you guys who are listening to think about this. This is not both sides are, just quibbling or fighting issue. There is some seriously awful stuff being defended, and that must stop from the left, because that gives it more credibility. And with that, I think we are done.
Awesome.
Whew.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to another episode of Polite Conversations. You can support this podcast by sharing the shit out of it, making some noise about it, or contributing via Patreon. Patreon.com/Nice Mangoes. No E in mangoes. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Nice Mangoes. If you want to make a one-time donation instead of a monthly Patreon one, you can do so via PayPal. nicemangoes.blog@gmail.com. Remember, no E in mangoes. If you've got an interesting story and would potentially like to be a guest, you can email me there too.